Hello everyone, this is Ravinder Dundra and welcome back to my channel. In this lesson, we are going to discuss about class 10th geography chapter number 6, that is manufacturing industries. In the previous lectures about this chapter, we have already seen what is manufacturing, importance of manufacturing and the relationship between agriculture and industries. So now let us discuss about the next topic, that is contribution of industry towards national economy. That means how much contribution is made by these manufacturing industries towards this something known as this GDP. And you all know very well what is GDP, how it is calculated, gross domestic product. So when it comes to the manufacturing industries, over the past 2 decades, that means from the last 20 years, the share of the GDP from the manufacturing industries is only 17%. And if we compare with the other countries, they are contributing somewhere around 25 to 30% of their GDP. So India is contributing only 17% of the GDP, but the East Asian economies, they are contributing 25 to 30% of their GDP. And over the last decade, if we compare the growth rate, that means change from previous year to the present year, from the last decade, the growth rate is only 7%. But we want to achieve 12% growth rate from manufacturing industries. And in order to achieve the 12% of growth rate, the government has set up something known as this NMCC, which means National Manufacturing Competitiveness Council. And the main objective of this NMCC is to achieve 12% growth rate from manufacturing industries. So if we can see once again, it is contributing only 17% of the GDP. We need to contribute and the growth rate is only 7%. We need to achieve 12%. And how we can achieve? By government has set up something known as this NMCC, National Manufacturing Competitiveness Council. So next, let us see what are the factors that influence the location of any industry. That means what factors are responsible for setting up an industry. So let us see. The first and very important factor is this availability of raw material. So we should have this raw material in order to set up any industry. So that is the first requirement. Then the second one is labor. So in order to set up any industry, after setting up the industry, we need some kind of labor who can work in that industries. And the third one is this capital. Capital means money required to start a business. So if we have money, we can set up this, or we can invest money and we can set up the industry. And the fourth one is power. That means nowadays every industry, it requires power supply. So there should be some abundant supply of power without interruptions in the power supply. At the same time, the last and very important thing is market. After setting up the industry, after the production started, we should have some buyers who can buy these goods produced in the industry. That means we need a market in order to sell our goods. So these are the 4 important factors which are responsible for setting up a factory. Then once the factory is set up, means automatically the area around that factory starts developing, and which automatically become something like a urban area. So basically industrial activity starts. When an industrial activity starts, automatically urbanization follows. So if the industries are being set up, automatically urbanization will also take place. So now we will see how the relationship between industries and urbanization exists. Now, as I have mentioned that industrialization and urbanization, they go hand in hand. That means if the industries are setting up, urbanization will takes place. So let us see how it takes place. So urbanization and industrialization go hand in hand. How it goes hand in hand is that first and very important thing is that the cities which are there in the country, they provide market. The first and very important thing is that the cities will provide the market, and at the same time, apart from a market, it also provides services such as banking, insurance, transport, labor and financial advice. So like this, different kinds of services are mostly available in cities. So therefore, by making use of all these services, or in order to expect all these services, sometimes the industries are being set up in the cities. So that is one thing. Then many industries, they come together to make use of advantages offered by urban centers known as agglomeration economies. That means to make use of all these services, banking, insurance, transport, finance, market, in order to make use of all these services, most of the industries, they come together and they form into something known as agglomeration economies, which means agglomeration economies means all the industries which belong to the same category, they come together and they set up their factories very close to each other. And the reason is that they can share the raw material, they can share the labor, they can share the new technology, they can share the new skill of the labor. So like this, many advantages can be shared together if they all can set up in one particular place. So that mostly where they set up there wherever these things are available, and which we call them as this agglomeration economies. So mostly if industries are setting up means cities will develop, or if the cities are already developing means mostly the industries will be kept in the cities. So both are interlinked and interdependent upon each other. But when we take about this pre-independence period, where they used to set up these industries are, they used to set up the areas wherever the overseas trade is possible. And you all know that in the olden days the trade is possible only through oceans in the other countries. So therefore most of the industries were kept or were set up near to the places where the overseas trade can be easily followed, such as Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai. All these areas they have their seaport, that means which can be easily transported anything to the other countries. So therefore they all have set up their factories in these coastal areas, or you can say coastal cities. Why? Because they can set up or they can transport whatever they have produced to the other countries very easily. Then if you can see the industry and market linkage, how the link is happening between industry and market. So first you see inputs such as factors of production, land, labor, capital. At the same time raw materials are kept, then they are all transported to the factory, and in the factory the manufacturing process takes place, the output comes, and this output again transported to the market. So among all these things, the common thing which is circulating is this money. So starting from inputs till the market, you can see everywhere the money is being circulated. So this is how the relationship between these industries, cities, and the industry and market, and at the same time we have also seen how it is contributing towards the growth of this GDP. So next we will see about the classification of industries, manufacturing industries. Let us discuss about the classification of industries, how these industries are classified. So first, basically on the basis of source of raw material, the industries are mainly two types. One is agro-based industries, the second one is this mineral-based industries. So what do you mean by this agro-based industries? Those industries which are dependent upon the agriculture, we call them as this agro-based industries. That means cotton, wool, silk, jute, tea, coffee. So all these industries, they all are dependent on agriculture, or they all are closely related to the agriculture. Suppose you take textile industries, they are dependent on this cotton, or you take sugar industries, they are dependent on sugarcane. So like this, those industries which are dependent on agriculture, we call them as this agro-based industries. Then the next one is this mineral-based industries. That means those industries which are dependent upon these minerals, we call them as mineral-based industries. For example, you take iron and steel, cement industry, aluminum industry. So all these industries, they are dependent upon minerals. For example, iron and steel, they are dependent upon iron ore. Cement, they are dependent upon limestone. Aluminum, they are dependent upon bauxite. Like this, those industries which are dependent upon a mineral, we call them as mineral based industries. Then the next thing is, according to their main role, the industries are again two types. One is basic or key industries, and the second one is consumer industries. So what do you mean by these key industries? Key industries or basic industries means industries which supply their products as raw materials to the other industries. That means whatever the things that are produced by these industries, they are used as raw material in the other industries. Suppose you take this iron and steel industries. So all these iron and steel industries, they are producing iron and steel, and this iron and steel is a output for this iron and steel industry. But this is the output which is coming from these industries. The iron and the steel is used as a raw material in other industries. That means what we can understand, these are providing the basic things for the other industries. Then the next thing is consumer industries. That means those industries that produce direct use for the consumers. Many industries, they produce many goods which are directly used by the consumers, such as you take sugar, paper, toothpaste, etc., etc. Many things are there which are directly used by the consumers. Then the next one is on the basis of capital investment. That means how much money they are able to invest. Suppose on the basis on this capital investment, there are two types. One is small scale and the other one is this large scale. So small scale industries means those industries where the investment is lesser than 1 crore, and large scale means if they are investing more than 1 crore means we call them as this large scale industries. But this might change from time to time. So now it is 1 crore, maybe in future it might become into 2 crore. So we don't know. But as of now, if the investment is less than 1 crore, we call them as small scale industries. If the investment is more than 1 crore, we call them as this large scale industries. Then the next one is on the basis of ownership. So on the based on ownership, there are mainly 4 different categories. One is public sector, private, joint, cooperative sector. So public sector means what? Those industries which are owned and operated by the government, we call them as this public sector industries, such as Bell and SAIL, Bharat Heavy Electronics Limited, Steel Authority of India Limited. And private sector means, you see, those industries which are owned and operated by an individual to make profits, we call them as this private sector industries. You take Tisco, Reliance, etc. Many things are private sector industries. Then joint sector industries, those industries which are owned and operated by both public and private sector together, we call them as this joint sector industries. And the best example for this joint sector is Oil India Limited, which is owned both private and public sector. Then the next one, last one is this cooperative sector. What do you mean by this cooperative sector? The cooperative sector means those industries which are owned and operated by the producers of raw material or the suppliers of the raw material, or sometimes both these people, they together join to set up an industry and they share the profits collectively. So that kind of industries, we call them as cooperative sector. And here this best example is sugar industries in Maharashtra. So Maharashtra, you can find a lot of cooperative sectors. So next we will discuss about the other type of classification of industries. We will see the last type of industry, that is based on the bulk and weight of the raw materials and finished goods. That means depending upon the weight of the raw material and depending upon the output and their weight, how much output, how much bulk it is. So depending upon that, again there are 2 different types of industries. One is heavy industries and the second one is light industries. So heavy industries such as we can take the best example is this iron and steel industries. Why? Because the raw material is bulk and weight is very high in this iron and steel industries. And the next one is the light industries, which use light raw materials and produce light goods. That means basically the weight of the raw material is very less and the weight of the output is also very less. And the best example is this electrical goods. So based on this bulk and weight of the raw materials and finished goods, 2 types of industries are there. One is heavy industries and the other one is this light industries. So with this we have completed this classification of industries. In the next lecture we will discuss about this agro based industries. Thank you.